Well, we're here today in Vermillion, South Dakota with Michael Myers, former law professor at the School of Law, USD. And he wants to tell us about something that happened to him this week. And it didn't get started here, but it kind of ended here.
Well, let's talk about the adventures of aging. I'm 79 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Taught at the School of Law full-time for 26 years, 3 years,
Mm-hmm.
69 to 72, at which time notable people like Jim Abbott and Michael Keller were students of mine.
Mm-hmm.
Then I went off for 18 years and became a big-time hospital executive.
Mm-hmm.
And in my prime, I was the CEO of that 1,000-bed Mayo St. Mary's Hospital in Rochester.
Yes.
Then I went up to Minneapolis and with the CEO of an 830-bed Fairview Riverside Medical Center. And then I got a nice call from Dean Michael Driscoll. And he said, "Mike, why don't you come back and teach healthcare law and share that with the School of Business?" So I had a half-time with the School of Business,
Mm-hmm.
half-time with the School of Law, taught how to run a hospital on one end and then how to defend that litigation. Came back and now I've taught for another 23 years and then, boy, just earlier this week, you talk about an adventure of aging. Because once again, I did a radio show,
Mm-hmm.
the Elder Law Forum over WNAX,
Yep.
570. And every Sunday morning at 7:30, I would interview people, and I had a segment called, once again, The Adventures of Aging. I found that to be more interesting than interviewing professionals and officials. But I got involved in an interesting development with competing for the deanship.
Office politics, you might say.
Well, I tell you what, it was,
What?
and I applied for the deanship because of my background as an administrator and an executive, and then we had 3 other faculty members.
Mm-hmm.
Patrick Gary, Roger Barron, and a gentleman by the name of Tom Gooey. And we had, of course, a national search, and at some point, I became convinced, and I might have been wrong,
Mm-hmm.
that this was a sham dean's search, and that it was all put together with some support of some notable people.
Right.
And I made some observations about Dean Gooey and others, and external, and they made observations about myself. But ultimately, Dean Gooey became the dean.
Mm-hmm.
What led to this week's event, by the way, this adventure, for the first time in my life, I'm 79 years old, father of 7, highly respected professor. I'm down in the law school library, and here comes a nice woman security guard from the university.
Mm-hmm.
And I had received a letter from Dean Gooey about 1.5 years earlier, 2 years earlier,
Mm-hmm.
saying that they no longer loved me. A persona non grata letter saying, "Don't you ever come back on this campus again. And if you do, you're going to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of criminal law."
Mm-hmm.
And being a lawyer and realizing there was no court order supporting
Right.
that
No
incredible
restraining order or anything like that, right?
I've always felt that that was a letter that, as one lawyer mentioned, he said, Mike, that letter has about as much legal impact as a letter to the editor. And so I never thought it was quite serious.
Right.
And so I've been around the campus, but I never gone back into the law school because they said if I ever did, something bad would happen.
Right. Might get your job back.
Well, every Tuesday, I attend the Vermillion Rotary Club meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple of days before that, I'd been on campus looking for Professor Elizabeth Smith because she said she might be interested in taking some scholarship money that I have because I'm trying to put together a data system
Yep.
in connection with my medical and patient billing advocacy program.
Yep.
So I've been around, so I came out of that Rotary meeting and I thought, well, it's time to go in and perhaps, because I've shook hands with the dean downtown. He made an observation along the line that he thought that I was a nice person. And I had been in the law school previously for a seminar.
So let's clarify this. So you'd already been in the law school since your departure from USD.
Just on that one occasion.
Yeah, on one occasion. So you had already been in there, and nobody.
So I felt that
Yeah, would test the waters there.
Had been waived.
Yep.
And time had passed.
Right.
And now I thought I was a nice man. Mm-hmm. And I thought it'd be time to go up and shake hands and say.
For a second time.
Yeah. Are you serious about this? And why don't we let bygones be bygones? Mm-hmm. And more importantly, I've got this scholarship money because Sanford has told me that they were not going to, and they were legally not obligated to do something that I wanted them to do.
Right.
Provide me with their price list, otherwise known as the charge master.
Yep. Yeah, they don't want anybody to see that.
So I wanted to talk to the dean and I said, can we find a student or two to assist me in it'd be a great research project. And I've got some money, and so that was basically the intent, and I was really hoping that I would find Dean Barry Vickery, the dean that was in charge, that was there when I came on board after Michael Driscoll left, because he's quite he's diplomatic, and so I climbed those steps to go in, and I walked into the faculty lounge looking for
this was on
Dean Vickery.
And this was on Tuesday.
It was on Tuesday, right after the Rotary meeting.
Okay.
And the first person I ran into was a Professor Tom Horton, who I believe was strongly involved, along with Tom Gooey, in developing that letter. But I shook hands with him, and how are you going? And he said, you're looking good. And I said, you're looking good. And there was a student in his office, and I just mentioned that I'm back in here, despite the notion that if I ever came back here, I'd be prosecuted to the fullest extent of criminal law. I thought that was simply an historic comment. Left there, walked through the lounge. We walked through the faculty area. Ran into Professor Chuck Thatcher, who's been teaching contracts for 2.5 decades, and as a matter of interest, I taught contracts from 69 to 72 prior to Professor Thatcher. And how you doing, Mike? Fine. And I said, by the way, I was local counsel for Dr. Annette Bosworth, and we had a pretty good outcome. And he said, well, that's interesting, Mike. He said, I have to leave for a while, but I'm coming back. I'd like to hear more about that. And so I interpreted that as being an invitation to re-enter.
We'll wrap up here.
Yeah. So,
all right. And I left there, and so I strolled over to the dean's office, thinking I'm going to find the dean and have one of those cordial, "Hello, Tom, how are you?" and let's see if we can get this all worked out, and would you accept the scholarship money? And his new secretary, who wasn't there when I was there, and I said, "Is Dean Vickery? Is Dean Gooey here?" "No, he's left, and he went that away." And I said, "Okay," and I walked that away, hoping maybe I might find him, but not looking with great intensity, not knowing exactly where he was. Went downstairs to the library. The library has been remodeled or expanded. Ran into a librarian who was there when I was there, and I said, "Is Doris still around?" She said, "No, Doris. Doris is retired, and she retired under some interesting circumstances, and in terms of emotional interaction, had a discussion with Professor Gooey at that time, Dean Gooey at that time, and but she did indicate that she was concerned about his potential for an assault." "And what about Candace?" "No, she's retired as well." "Okay, well, now I'm getting ready to leave." And as I'm walking toward the exit of the library, I see this rather stern-looking young woman, security guard, and I thought, "Oh my goodness."
She came up to you right away.
And I thought, well, maybe they really do mean it. And she came up and, "Are you Michael Myers?" "Yes." I'm leaving," I indicated, because I figured you were there. "I'm leaving." "You're not leaving." "What?" "You're under arrest." And remember, I've never been arrested in my life.
Yeah.
"Put your hands behind your back." And I've never had him to do that either. And she slapped those handcuffs on. And by the way, just for the audience, you should know that those handcuffs kind of hurt.
Yep.
My wrists are 79 years old, and she put those on, and now I'm being marched outside of the campus.
By the way, did she read you your rights, or did she tell you why she was arresting you at that moment?
There wasn't any rights. She just said I was under arrest, and marched me over to. Remember, this is the university police. Just marched me to my car and wanted my keys and took me back. There's another security guard waiting for me, and they put me in the back seat. I've never been in the back seat of this squad car with my hands behind my back.
And you got to come
a little
down
discomfort,
here.
And they, I think they kind of patted me down before they threw me in the back. They must have a procedure. Brought me down here to the sheriff's area for booking. And we're down there, and I've never had this before, and they're basically fingerprinting. At one point I said, I think I need a lawyer. I've been a lawyer for a long time, but I think I need a lawyer. And most of them, some of them knew me, and no, Mike, you don't need a lawyer. You're simply being booked, and then you get to leave. Well, okay. Fingerprints, social security number, stand up against the wall, look at the camera.
They breathalyzed you too.
Oh, have you had alcohol? No. And they put this item in my.
I might later.
In my. Right. blow, keep blowing. And I kept blowing. So obviously I had no alcohol, and that turned out to be all right. So they put me through and this is really, I'm saying, and I now can empathize with people that I've been asked to represent.
Exactly.
Being accused of a crime, being booked without the aid of a lawyer, respectable man, 7 children saying, "What, Dad? You were what?" The former CEO of Mayo St. Mary's and been on city councils, and So anyway, that was a really kind of an eye-opener, and then I said, well, now we'll take you back to your car.
Yeah, and what we'll probably do is continue this over at the campus.
Wonderful, because now remember, when we go back on campus, there's some risk, gentlemen.
Yes.
And my sister said, "You're going to do what?" Well, I'm going back on there to show, as part of this documentary, what happened.
That's what.
So let's go over.